Lane Bryant.
The Lane Bryant.
The Lane Bryant store.
The Lane Bryant clothing store. Lane Bryant.
The Lane Bryant store.
The Lane Bryant.
The Lane Bryant store.
911 emergency. Stay on the line. Stay on the line. Let me get you to Tinley Park. Don't hang up.
On a Saturday morning in February of 2008, a man walked into a women's clothing store in a suburban Chicago strip mall. He stayed for 40 minutes. When he left, 5 women were dead. I want you to think about that number. 40 minutes. Not the frantic, panic timeline of a robbery gone wrong. Not the seconds between a demand and a trigger. 40 minutes. Inside a store, with 6 women who were bound and could not leave.
Smile at her every day.
I think about her every day, but when you say 15 years, I'm shocked.
He had time. He used it. And then he walked out into an ordinary February morning, got into a vehicle, and disappeared.
911 call from the store manager sent police to the scene, but the killer was able to escape minutes later.
His name is not known. His face is known only from a sketch. He has never been arrested. He has never been charged. He has never been identified.
We were contacted by the South Suburban Major Crimes Task Force requesting assistance and just trying to identify people that might have been in the area who could have perpetrated this crime.
18 years later, the Lane Bryant murders in Tinley Park, Illinois, remain the largest unsolved mass shooting in modern American history. 5 women, 1 survivor, 0 arrests, and the 40 minutes that no one has ever fully explained.
And I hear ding, 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 ding. And I'm listening to voicemails and people are crying on my phone saying, answer your phone, answer your phone.
Killed 5 women and...
There's never been a single arrest made on this tragedy.
And this is the open file. Tinley Park is a village of roughly 57,000 people on the southwest edge of the Chicago metropolitan area. It is the kind of community that does not typically generate national headlines. It is residential, working class in its roots. The kind of suburb that grew up around the idea of safe streets and good schools and ordinary weekends. It sits far enough from the city that the rhythms of Chicago feel distant, near enough that the city is always somewhere on the horizon. The Brookside Marketplace on 191st Street is a standard suburban strip mall. In early 2008, it anchored the usual combination of retail staples, the kind of plaza where people ran errands on Saturday mornings, picked up dry cleaning, stopped for coffee, moved through without much thought. The Lane Bryant store in that plaza was a women's clothing retailer, one of hundreds of franchise locations across the country, part of the charming Shops in Kirsten family of brands, a store that catered specifically to plus-size women, a store whose clientele on any given morning was exactly who you would expect. Women shopping for themselves, between errands, between obligations. On the morning of Saturday, February 2nd, 2008, the store had just opened. By 10:45 that morning, the police had been called.
911 emergency. Lane Bryant. Tinley Park. Hurry. Stay on the line. Stay on the line.
And the Brookside Marketplace, that unremarkable, ordinary strip mall, became the site of the largest unsolved mass murder in modern American history. Before there was a crime scene, there were 6 women. Rhoda McFarlane was 42 years old. She was the store manager, the person responsible for opening the Lane Bryant that morning, for unlocking the doors and turning on the lights and getting the day started. She was from Joliet. She was by the accounts of people who knew her, exactly the kind of person you want running a store. Steady, reliable, the person others look to when something needs to get done. Her brother, Maurice Hamilton, would later speak to reporters on anniversary after anniversary.
I just don't want to put the focus to be on my family. There's 5 other families and a victim who survived the shooting. So I don't want it to look lopsided. The justice needs to be served for all families, not just mine, but I'm gonna speak for all of them. We do want to see justice served.
He never stopped. He never stopped believing the case would be solved.
If you know this person, you would be able to identify him from his voice.
I don't know how you can live with yourself knowing that 5 ladies got put to rest for a crime that was senseless.
Carrie Hudek-Chuso was 33 years old. She was a social worker from Frankfort, Illinois. She had chosen a profession built on the conviction that people in crisis deserve someone in their corner, that the right kind of presence at the right moment can change the direction of a life. She was in the store as a customer that morning. She had stopped in the way people do on a Saturday, between one thing and the next, without any particular expectation of what the next hour would bring.
Hudek's 33-year-old sister Carrie was one of those victims.
Her brother Mike Hudek would become one of the most consistent public voices connected to the case.
This individual is not going to be caught until somebody speaks up or identifies who he is. I mean, he's somebody's son, grandson, nephew, boyfriend, whatever the case may be. Somebody's aware of who this individual is.
He named his daughter, born the day after Carrie was murdered, after his sister, Carrie. Jennifer L. Bishop was 34 years old. She had driven to Tinley Park from South Bend, Indiana. She was the only victim who came from outside the immediate Chicago area. A detail that has never been fully explained, a small mystery within the larger one. She was in a store she had traveled to for reasons that were ordinary and private, on a morning that was supposed to be like any other Saturday. Connie R. Woolfolk was 37 years old. She was from Flossmoor, a neighboring suburb. She was a customer. She had walked into a clothing store and was browsing the racks when a man came through the back door and changed everything. Sarah T. Shafransky was 22 years old. She was the youngest of the 5 who died, a part-time employee, young enough that this was a job alongside something else, a life still in its early formation, an entire trajectory still ahead of her. She had come to work on a Saturday morning. She was 22 years old, the 6th woman, the part-time employee whose name police have never publicly released, in deference to her privacy and safety, survived.
The 6th woman, a store employee, was injured but survived. To this day, the killer remains on the loose.
She is the only person who was in that store and came out alive. And the manner of her survival is one of the details in this case that is almost impossible to hold without flinching.
This haunting piece of evidence could still help investigators solve the decade-old murder case. The man on the recording is the killer who posed as a delivery man.
The gunman did not enter through the front door. He came through the back. Investigators believe he entered the rear of the Lane Bryant store and initially engaged in a brief conversation with some of the women inside. His approach, according to sources close to the investigation, was designed to appear legitimate. He may have posed as a delivery man, someone with a reason to be near the back entrance of a retail store on a Saturday morning. Someone who belonged there, at least briefly, at least long enough.
5 women shot dead on a quiet Saturday morning in a suburban clothing store. Former federal law enforcement agent Ed Farrell worked on the investigation.
We were tangentially involved through identifying an electronic footprint of those involved in the crime.
The pretense didn't hold. He became increasingly agitated. And then he announced a robbery. He bound all 6 women. Police later reported the binding involved duct tape. 6 women, incapacitated, moved to the back of the store, to the area near the fitting rooms, removed from any window, any sightline from the parking lot, any possibility of being seen from outside. And then the 40 minutes began. Rhoda McFarland, the store manager, managed to make a phone call. She called 911.
911 emergency. Lane Bryant. Tinley Park, hurry. Stay on the line. Stay on the line.
That's what you do, huh? Shut up, dude. I'm looking at bullshit.
The call went through. Police were dispatched. The first officer arrived within 2 minutes of that call. 2 minutes. He was already gone. Inside the store, he had shot all 6 women in the head, execution style, one by one. 5 of them died. The 6th, the part-time employee, survived because in the moment before the bullet reached her, she shifted her head. The bullet grazed her neck. She understood what was happening. She lay still. She did not move. She let him believe she was dead. He believed her. And so she lived. And so she became the only witness. This is the question that has never been answered. Why 40 minutes? Police have stated that the gunman entered through the rear of the store and remained inside for approximately 40 minutes before leaving. 40 minutes is not the duration of a robbery. 40 minutes in a space this small, with 6 bound women, is something else entirely. Investigators confirmed that at least one of the victims was sexually assaulted during that time. The nature and extent of what occurred during those 40 minutes has never been fully disclosed publicly. Details held close by investigators, part of a case file that has grown to tens of thousands of pages over 18 years, none of it released in full.
Shootings on this date in 2008 is the largest unsolved mass shooting in modern America. An unknown gunman shot 6 women in the back room of the store that day. 5 of them died.
We're at Tinley Park, hurry. Stay on the line. Stay on the line.
The documentary filmmaker Charlie Min, who spent 4 months interviewing families and witnesses for a film released in early 2026, raised the same question directly.
Solve it already. It's been 18 freaking years, and the families deserve better, a lot better.
She died on the 2nd. My birthday was on the 3rd.
We trust in that she's up there in heaven with her, so it gives us a sign of relief. So.
Why would someone rob a women's clothing store on a Saturday morning? He asked. Lane Bryant is not a store known for holding large amounts of cash. He had to have known something or been watching. This doesn't feel entirely random. Police have officially maintained that the crime began as an armed robbery that escalated into sexual assault and murder. Their public position is that the killer decided, at some point during those 40 minutes, that leaving witnesses was too dangerous. That explanation answers the what. It does not answer the why, not fully, not in a way that accounts for the time, the particular, deliberate, extended amount of time that he spent inside that store before walking out into a Saturday morning and vanishing without a trace. The woman who survived has never spoken publicly about what she experienced. Her identity has been protected by law enforcement from the beginning. Her name has never been released. She was a young woman, a part-time employee at a retail store, and she survived the worst morning of her life by staying completely still, while a man she had just watched execute 5 other people walked past her and left. What she gave investigators was the most important thing anyone connected to this case could give them: a description. She described a black man in his late 20s, thick, cornrowed hair with a receding hairline, one braid on the right side of his face, draped to approximately cheek level, decorated at the end with 4 light green beads.
Offender is described as a medium-skinned male black, 5'9", 230 to 260 pounds. He was wearing a black waist-length winter coat, a black knit cap, and dark jeans.
The weapon ballistics analysis determined was a .40 caliber Glock handgun. Police released a composite sketch on February 11th, 2008, 9 days after the murders. It generated 24 leads within the first 24 hours. None of those leads produced an arrest. Over the years, Tinley Park investigators have released updated composite images, including, in recent years, a 3-dimensional modeled rendering developed using newer forensic imaging technology. The suspect's physical description has not changed. The image has become clearer. The man it depicts has remained a ghost. The survivor's account is the foundation of everything investigators know about who was in that store. She is the reason there is a sketch at all. She is the reason the case is still officially open, rather than permanently closed. She shifted her head at the last moment. She lay still. She waited. And because of that, the investigation has had something to hold on to for 18 years.
It was just after 10 a.m. on February 2nd, 2008, Groundhog Day, when a man who said he was a delivery driver walked into a... Just 2 minutes later, a Tinley Park police officer was on that scene, but it was already too late.
The response in the immediate aftermath was significant. The Tinley Park Police Department, the Illinois State Police, the Illinois Attorney General's Office, the Will County State's Attorney's Office, and the FBI's Chicago Field Office formed a multi-agency task force. Tips poured in. A reward of $100,000 was offered, half donated by Lane Bryant's parent company, Charming Shops, Inc., for information leading to an arrest. America's Most Wanted profiled the case. The Steve Wilkos Show, being taped in Chicago at the time, dedicated airtime to the suspect sketch. The sketch circulated nationally. Nothing led to the door of a suspect.
Kathy, tomorrow marks the 10-year anniversary of the Lane Bryant mass murder. It's been 10 hard years for the victims' families, detectives, and the community. Tonight, police release a 3D sketch of the killer, and there's new hope from an elite society of crime solvers who believe this case can be cracked.
What no one understood in the first days of the investigation, what became one of the defining features of the case, was how clean the scene was. A man who had spent 40 minutes inside a store, who had bound 6 women, who had committed a sexual assault, who had shot 6 people in the head with a .40 caliber handgun, and left almost nothing behind that could be traced to an identity. The weapon was never recovered. The vehicle he used to leave was never confirmed. The route he took out of the parking lot was never established with certainty. He'd been inside a clothing store for 40 minutes, and he left as if he had never been there at all. What investigators did retain, carefully, deliberately, as forensic technology continued to advance, was biological evidence from the scene. DNA material that could not be analyzed to the standard of identification in 2008. Material that, as the years passed and the science of genetic genealogy expanded, became the case's greatest remaining hope. As of 2026, that DNA has not produced a public identification. The investigation is active. The task force meets. The evidence is periodically resubmitted as new methods become available. The door has not opened, but investigators say it is not locked.
The Vidac Society is a very prominent society, and they gave us some good ideas to move in different directions. Myself, I thought that probably we had a viable suspect.
After February 2nd, 2008, the Lane Bryant store at the Brookside Marketplace did not reopen. It remained empty for 6 years. People passed it in the parking lot. They ran their errands at the other stores in the plaza. They picked up dry cleaning. They got coffee. And the Lane Bryant store sat dark behind them, closed, unused, a space that the community could not quite decide what to do with. In 2013, after 6 years, the space was remodeled. A TJ Maxx moved in. The physical space where 5 women were murdered became a retail floor again. Different merchandise, different signage, the same tile, the same back entrance. The families of the victims have gathered at that location on every anniversary since. February 2nd, year after year. Some years with cameras present, some without. Some years with more hope than others. Mike Hudek, Carrie Chuso's brother, has been at most of them. He has given interviews on the 5th anniversary, the 10th, the 15th, the 18th.
Trusting that she's up there in heaven with her, so it gives us a sign of relief. So
his voice has changed over the years. The raw grief of the early anniversaries settling gradually into something more like resolve. He said in 2026 that his anger had softened, that he had forgiven, not for the perpetrator's sake, but for his own. That the dark rabbit hole of what if had cost him too much to keep climbing into it.
I've forgiven this person because I had to. I couldn't keep living and going down that dark rabbit hole of what if and what and why, because it doesn't matter.
At the end of the day, he said, somebody knows, and shame on that person for keeping it quiet so long. Maurice Hamilton, Rhoda McFarlane's brother, said something different on a different anniversary. He said he believed the case would be solved, that someone would eventually come forward, that the next press conference he attended would be the one where they announced an arrest. He has been waiting for that press conference for 18 years.
Hamilton says he will never stop searching for that voice.
I think of the person as a coward. I wish nothing but the worst for him. He'll come to justice one day. I mean, if it's here or if it's up there.
There are things about the Lane Bryant murders that do not resolve neatly into the robbery narrative. Why a women's clothing store? Lane Bryant is not a store that carries significant cash. It is not a target a financially motivated criminal with knowledge of retail operations would typically select. The cash register of a suburban women's clothing franchise on a February Saturday morning is not the kind of score that explains the planning, the approach, the back entrance, the extended duration. Why 40 minutes? A robbery, even one that turns violent, even one that escalates into something the perpetrator had not originally intended, does not take 40 minutes in a small retail space. 40 minutes requires something else. It requires either a level of comfort that comes from certainty he would not be interrupted, or a purpose that extended beyond taking money from a cash register. Why was he so careful? a man who spent 40 minutes in a store, who left biological evidence on at least one victim, who shot 6 people and managed to reach his vehicle and disappear, all before police arrived in a window of 2 minutes, understood something about how investigations work. He understood what to leave behind and what not to. He understood time. He understood risk. Filmmaker Charlie Min put it directly in his 2026 documentary. Tinley Park PD will not solve this case. Social media will.
The film's director, Charlie Min, who has produced about 45 other documentaries about unsolved crimes.
Tinley Park PD will not solve this case. Social media will. That's why I'm making this documentary, to raise as much awareness as possible.
He is not, by saying that, suggesting the police did nothing. He is suggesting that after 18 years of official investigation, the most likely path to an arrest runs through someone who already knows something. A friend, a family member, a neighbor, someone who heard something in 2008 and stayed quiet. Someone who has carried the weight of knowing for nearly 2 decades.
Pretty sure they got something. So this is not going to be a case of somebody gets a case. They want to make sure they got the right guy, I'm pretty sure.
This is weird for this town. I mean, we haven't had this kind of problem in who knows how long, you know, and they got to get this guy.
I'm sure they're working on it, and sure they'll do their best, see what happens.
The reward is still $100,000. The tip line is still active. The DNA is still in the evidence database, waiting for a match that the advancing science of genetic genealogy makes more achievable every year. Someone knows. That sentence has been said by law enforcement, by families, by journalists, by documentary filmmakers. For 18 years, it has not yet produced an answer. On February 2nd, 2026, 18 years to the day, the families gathered again. A documentary film was announced for theatrical release. Its director, Charlie Min, had spent 4 months doing what the official investigation could not. Talking to the people connected to this case on camera, in public, with their names attached to their words. He interviewed the families of the victims. He interviewed witnesses. He interviewed people who had watched the investigation stall and start and stall again across nearly 2 decades. His assessment was direct. Solve it already, he said. It's been 18 years, and the families deserve better. The Tinley Park Police Chief, Tom Tilton, issued a statement. This investigation has never stopped. Our detectives and partners continue to evaluate leads, review evidence, and apply available investigative and forensic tools as they evolve. This work occurs every day. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. An investigation that has never stopped and still has not produced an arrest. Work that happens every day and has not yet produced a name. A task force that includes the FBI and the Illinois State Police and has, for 18 years, not been able to put a face to the sketch on the bulletin board. What new technology offers? Specifically, genetic genealogy, the same method that identified Robert Brasher's in the Austin yogurt shop case, that has cracked cold cases across the country that once seemed permanently sealed, is a door that did not exist in 2008. The DNA recovered from that Lane Bryant store went into evidence in a year before 23, and Me had reached its first 1 million users, before genetic genealogy databases had grown to the size where partial matches could trace family trees back to a suspect. The science that exists today did not exist when the crime was committed. That is the thing investigators are holding on to. That is the thing the families are holding on to. 5 women went to a store on a Saturday morning in February of 2008.
What was going through the perpetrator's mind to take these innocent women and put them in this position? A wicked mind, a violent mind.
There's a murderer that's walking the streets, and we need to make sure that that person is brought to justice.
For this to go on for so long, it's just horrible.
Rhoda McFarland, who managed that store, who turned on the lights and opened the doors and called 911 when the worst thing she could have imagined came through the back entrance. Carrie Chuzo, who was a social worker, who spent her professional life in service to people in crisis, who was in a clothing store between one Saturday errand and the next. Jennifer Bishop, who had driven in from South Bend, Indiana, for reasons that were her own, that were ordinary, that no one thought to ask about before the morning became something else entirely. Connie Woolfolk, who was 37 years old and from Flossmoor, and was browsing the racks when a man appeared and changed everything. Sarah Shafransky, who was 22, who was at work, who had most of her life still ahead of her. A man spent 40 minutes with them in a room where they could not leave, and then he walked out, into a Saturday morning, into a parking lot, into 18 years of silence so complete that, despite 5 murders and 1 survivor and a task force and a $100,000 reward and a DNA database and a documentary film and anniversary after anniversary of vigils and statements and interviews, he has never been found. What no one has been able to explain, what remains after all of it, at the center of this case, like something you can feel but cannot name, is those 40 minutes. Not the sketch, not the weapon, not the evidence in the database, the 40 minutes, the time he had and chose to use, the decisions made in a back room of a strip mall clothing store while 6 women waited for whatever came next. That time has never been accounted for. It has never been explained. It sits at the heart of this case the way unresolved things do, present, heavy, impossible to move past. 5 women went to work and went shopping on a Saturday. One of them shifted her head at the last moment and lived. And somewhere, the man who spent 40 minutes in that store is still out there. The silence around what happened in those 40 minutes is still loud, and the door has not yet opened.